My clear answer is no. There is very little sign of that. Yes, there is some issues, particularly in the property sector, and there's been a mild decline in prices. There's been, of course, in the property development sector, there are big issues. The evergreens of the world, they're going through a really tough time financially. But overall, this is nothing compared to what happened in Japan. So the numbers just don't add up to a balance sheet recession. Also, what you see in China is largely still contained to the property development sector. And there are issues and they need to be resolved, and they will have effects on the financial sector that needs to be managed. There's no question about that. But if you look at the extent of problems, it is absolutely incomparable with what happened in Japan in the late 80s, early 90s. The bubble in Japan was so much larger that the total blow to everybody's balance sheet. So it was not just property developers, it was all companies, it was all households, experienced a very big blow to the balance sheet. And to give you an order of magnitude, the former governor of the Japan Central Bank, he recently released an estimate that something in the order of 230% of GDP, so 2.3 times GDP, was destroyed in wealth because of the decline in stock prices, because of the decline in land prices, because of the decline in housing prices. China is absolutely nowhere near. I think China is experiencing something very, very different. And there is quite a bit of uncertainty at the moment, globally, but also the policy uncertainty globally is at a very high level. In China, what I see happening is that the leadership is trying to now quite determinedly move to a different pattern of growth. It has been talked about for a very, very long time, that the old pattern of growth of relying on investment and exports and mobilization of labor from the countryside, that has run its course in China, and that a new course relying on productivity growth, on innovation, would have to be taken. That's been on the books since at least 2013. The third plenum of the Central Committee in 2013 actually gave a plan for that. Since then, a lot has happened, but now I think the leadership is quite a bit more determined to make it happen, but in a very different way from the past. For private companies, it is quite difficult to go. And the leadership has said, look, we want private companies also to be part of this national game, i.e., they need to be serving the national goals, and much more than in the past. That's a very new policy environment as well. COVID and then the somewhat messy exit from COVID, that gave a lot of uncertainty to households. So here we are, we're looking at a fairly major structural shift, and the numbers are starting to show it. The investment is majorly shifting away from property into manufacturing, for instance, away from services into manufacturing. So, and that requires quite a bit of adjustment. There's some friction there as well, because if you went to school and you thought, okay, well, you're going to be a programmer for 10 cents and make a career in making games, that is no longer a very strongly growing sector, but you now have to look at manufacturing of high level chips or something. But the direction, the way I see it, is now actually making that shift to a new growth model work. What I feel still needs attention is the demand side of that. So the supply side is quite clear to me what is happening, but the demand side is less clear, because you still need to, and demand means in the end what actually determines GDP, what actually determines income and employment and household income and spending. So that requires a different approach. And I think the next third plenum of the 20th Central Committee might be a really good opportunity to achieve some of the reforms necessary to have the demand side catch up with the supply side reforms that has been happening